For years, I've wanted a robot vacuum and mop. Every time I looked at buying one, I kept asking myself the same question. Would it actually fit my home and the way my family lives? Because my house isn't just one big open space. I've got hardwood floors, carpet, two boys constantly leaving things around, a very messy parrot, and there's usually something on the floor. So when ECOVACS asked me to test their new DEEBOT T90 Pro OMNI, I wanted to find out whether it could genuinely take some of the everyday cleaning off my hands. After living with it for the past few weeks, I'll show you how it performed, what surprised me, a few things I'd still improve, and whether I'd actually miss it if I had to give it back. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by ECOVACS. As always, everything you're about to see is based on my own hands-on testing and my own experience using the robot in my home. Hi, I'm Meme. I test kitchen and home appliances to see how they actually perform in everyday life. If that's the sort of content you enjoy, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Now, let's take a look. The DEEBOT T90 Pro OMNI is both a robot vacuum and a robot mop. It comes with the OMNI Station, which automatically empties the dustbin, washes and dries the roller. Hidden behind the front panel, you'll also find the dust bag and the cleaning solution tank, which the station automatically mixes with water while mopping. Instead of using two spinning mop pads, it uses ECOVACS's 27cm Osmo Roller 3.0 system, which is designed to keep the roller clean while mopping. The robot also includes blast high airflow suction with up to 30,000 pascals, a zero tangle 4.0 wide span dual bearing brush structure, true edge 3.0 edge cleaning, and AI VI 3D 4.0 obstacle avoidance. I'll show you how all of those performed as we go through the review. Getting everything set up was straightforward. I connected the robot to the ECOVACS app, updated the firmware, let it fully charge, and it quickly created a map of my home. With everything ready to go, it was finally time to see how well it actually cleaned. For the first few days, I simply let the robot clean the kind of mess my family normally leaves behind. Crumbs, parrot seeds, footprints, flour from homemade pizzas, and everything else that naturally builds up during the week. Overall, I was really happy with the vacuuming. It handled our everyday mess without any problems. One thing I noticed during those first few cleaning runs though was around a couple of my highest traffic areas, particularly near the coffee table and my parrot's cage. At first, I thought the robot was simply missing those spots, but after checking the map in the app, I realized they were sitting right on the boundary between two rooms. I adjusted the room boundaries, ran another clean, and the difference was immediately noticeable. So, it's worth spending a few minutes fine-tuning the map. I also learned quite quickly not to judge the robot until it had completely finished cleaning. More than once, it returned to areas I thought it had skipped, before carrying on with the rest of the room. Another thing I also discovered was that my two thicker higher pile rugs were simply too thick for the robot to climb onto consistently. Rather than seeing that as a fault, I just adapted my routine. For everyday cleaning, I either roll them up or create a virtual boundary in the app and let the robot clean the rest of the house. One feature I particularly wanted to test was the robot suction. ECOVACS calls this blast high airflow suction, delivering up to 30,000 pascals of suction. Rather than focusing on the specs, I wanted to see how it handled everyday debris on both hard floors and carpet. So, I scattered some cornflakes onto the carpet underneath our breakfast table and let the robot clean, selecting vac only. Overall, I thought it did a good job picking up larger everyday debris on the area rug. For the hardwood floor, I scattered some rice and again selected vac only. Overall, I was happy with the pickup. It collected most of the rice, although it did leave a few pieces behind. For everyday crumbs and larger everyday debris, I thought it did a good job overall. During my testing, the robot also navigated confidently around dining chairs, table legs, the kitchen island, and other everyday obstacles without getting stuck. ECOVACS calls this AI VI 3D 4.0 obstacle avoidance. It also moved between rooms over the transition strips without any problems using true pass adaptive 4-wheel drive. For my first mopping test, I selected vac and mop mode. To see how the Osmo Roller 3.0 handled a real household spill, I spilled some sweetened tea onto my hardwood floor, left it for a few minutes and let the robot clean it. I thought it did a really good job cleaning the tea spill, making sure it spent a bit of time soaking it all up. One thing that confused me at first was that instead of heading straight for the spill, the robot started by vacuuming a carpeted mat. I was worried it might be getting it wet, so I stopped to check. The carpet mat was completely dry. After looking through the cleaning log in the app, I realized what it was doing. Whenever it detected carpet, it automatically switched into carpet protection mode, lifted the Osmo roller and increased the suction while vacuuming. After the OMNI Station had finished washing and drying the roller, I flipped the robot over to see how everything looked underneath. The main mop roller was a little stained, particularly around the edges, but overall it looked much cleaner than I'd expected after cleaning the tea spill. It was also slightly warm from the drying cycle. What concerned me a little more were the parts that don't get washed. There was still a little liquid trapped around the side brush, and I also found some dried tea residue around the zero tangle brush area. So while the OMNI Station does a good job washing and drying the main mop roller, I'd still recommend giving the rest of the underside a quick inspection every now and then, especially after cleaning larger wet spills. Personally, I'd also wipe up any larger pools of liquid before sending the robot out. Not only does that reduce the amount of residue underneath, but it also helps avoid asking the robot to deal with more liquid than it really needs to. After trying the different cleaning modes, I found myself using Mop After Vacuum most often for heavier cleans. The robot vacuumed the entire area first, returned to the OMNI Station, emptied the onboard dustbin, washed the roller with hot water, and then came back to begin mopping. Personally, I found myself choosing different modes depending on the type of clean I wanted. I will leave the full sound of the station working at the end of this video if you'd like to hear how it sounds. One of the busiest cleaning sessions happened after we'd had family and friends over. There was food, a few spots of juice, lots of footprints, and plenty of everyday mess. For that clean, I selected Mop After Vacuum together with the Deep Clean, added some of the ECOVACS cleaning solution, and simply let the robot get on with the job. Instead of spending the next couple of hours vacuuming and mopping myself, I was able to get on with other things, while the robot quietly cleaned the house in the background. That was probably the moment I realized where a robot vacuum like this becomes genuinely useful. After using the robot for a few weeks, there were a few features that really stood out. The first was the edge cleaning. As the robot approached walls and cabinets, the Osmo roller extended by around 1.5 centimeters before retracting again as it moved away. ECOVACS calls this True Edge 3.0, and I definitely noticed it cleaning much closer to skirting boards and cabinets than I expected. Another feature I appreciated was the OMNI Station. One thing I noticed during my testing was that whenever the robot came across a particularly dirty area, or after cleaning a larger spill, it would return to the station, wash the roller with hot water, and then come back to continue cleaning. That meant it wasn't trying to mop the rest of the floor with the dirty roller. While the roller was being washed, the robot also topped up its battery. ECOVACS calls this power boost charging with adaptive charging. So, instead of simply sitting at the dock during washing and drying cycles, it uses that time to recover its battery. It's one of those little features that makes the whole cleaning process feel much more seamless. Once I'd finished all of my testing, I wanted to see how much maintenance the robot actually needed. The clean water tank lasted much longer than I'd expected, and even after several cleaning sessions, there was still some water remaining. Once I emptied the dirty water tank, it was obvious just how much dirt had been lifted from the floors. The cleaning solution also went much further than I'd expected because the robot automatically dilutes it while cleaning. Even after using it for a deeper clean, it had only used around half of what I'd added. The dust bag also surprised me. Even though the robot emptied itself after cleaning, it was still mostly empty. I also wanted to show you what everything looked like underneath the robot after a few weeks of normal use. I didn't stage a hair test, but between 3 people in the house, all with long hair, the robot had plenty of opportunity to prove itself. I was actually impressed. There wasn't any hair wrapped around the main roller. ECOVACS calls its anti-tangle system Zero Tangle 4.0. The mop brush was still in fairly good condition, but I still haven't figured out how to remove it. Since it is replaceable, I couldn't find anything in the manual. The only thing I noticed was that the side brush had started to bend slightly, which is perfectly normal after regular use and will probably be one of the first parts that eventually needs replacing. I also took a look inside the OMNI Station. The mop washing tray had collected quite a bit of dirt and residue after several weeks of cleaning, which really shows just how much dirt and grime the robot is removing from the floors. It's also a good reminder that although the robot takes care of most of the maintenance itself, it's still worth giving both the underside of the robot and the washing tray a quick clean every now and then to keep everything performing at its best. After living with it for a while, I also noticed a couple of little things. Because the onboard dustbin is fairly small, the robot returned to the OMNI Station quite often to empty itself during larger cleaning sessions. It wasn't a problem, but it did make some cleaning cycles take a little longer. One feature I did appreciate though was the voice prompts. The robot lets you know when it's returning to the station, emptying the dustbin, washing the roller, or when the cleaning cycle has finished. I know it sounds like a small thing, but I found it useful because I always knew what it was doing without needing to check the app. I actually ended up using the app much more than I expected, not because I was constantly changing settings, but because I could quickly check where the robot was, which room it had already cleaned, and how much was left without getting up to look. One thing that did surprise us though happened during dinner time when I was not doing any testing. The robot started cleaning by itself. At first I had no idea why it was happening, but after checking the dialogue history in the app, I realized it had picked up parts of our conversation as voice commands. If you plan on using Agent Eco, it's worth checking the voice assistant settings and dialogue history to make sure they suit the way your household uses voice control. No product is perfect, and there are still a few things I'd like to see improved. The clean water tank could really do with a maximum fill line. I'd also like to see different cleaning modes explained a little more clearly inside the app. Because I have two thicker rugs, I still need to roll them up occasionally or use virtual boundaries. I would have liked a dedicated mop only mode for those times when the floor just needed a quick freshen up. And because this robot relies on consumable parts, I hope replacement rollers, brushes, dust bags, and cleaning solution remain easy to buy and reasonably priced. Personally, I'd also prefer a reusable dustbin in the docking station rather than disposable dust bags. That's simply my personal preference. None of those were deal breakers, but they're worth mentioning. ECOVACS positions the T90 Pro OMNI as delivering a flagship experience at a mid-range price. After living with it for the past few weeks, I can see why they're positioning it that way, although there are still a few things I'd like to see improved. If you want to take a closer look, I've put all the product details and links in the description below. At the beginning of this review, I said there was one question I wanted answered. Would a robot vacuum actually fit my home and the way my family lives? After living with the ECOVACS DEEBOT T90 Pro OMNI for the past few weeks, I think the answer is yes. Not because it completely replaces vacuuming and mopping, because it doesn't. It still needs a little bit of help from me, but what it has done is take two regular household chores off my hands. Instead of thinking, I really should vacuum today, I can simply choose a room, schedule a clean, and let it get on with the job while I'm doing something else. Whether I'm editing, testing another appliance, making dinner, or just getting on with my day. It's quietly cleaning in the background, and that's exactly what I was hoping a robot vacuum would do. It hasn't completely replaced cleaning, but it has made keeping on top of it a whole lot easier. I hope you found this review helpful. I'm going to leave you with the full sound of the OMNI Station at work if you want to hear how it sounds. If you have any questions about the ECOVACS DEEBOT T90 Pro OMNI, or if there's something else you'd like me to test over the coming weeks, please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, and subscribe for more honest, real-world product reviews. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.